looking to these back time periods and applying, here's what this was like in this time period and this time period. I think we're in this. I think we're at full excess. And what was a marker that we saw happen in full in the absolute euphoria phase? Retail. Retail acted like pure dinguses. I'm sorry, I love you all, but look at like the Reddit, right? That's what you have to look at. Laser eyes, Wall Street bets, diamond hands, stimulus checks, like all the memes where they're like firing cannons of stimulus checks at stocks and stuff, right? That's the exact behavior in a much more conservative manner of like the 1920s and the roaring 20s and what it was like at the peak of the bubble. And if you go, like, everybody likes to read about Great Depression, but it's real interesting to read about or watch videos on the roaring 20s and what it was like then, and how it was the same phenomenon of everyday moms and dads were out there buying stocks and they were all making money. Everybody knew to throw money at the stock market, and you just turned it into more money and turned it into more money and turned it into more money. And then that's the behavior that we saw back there with, massive and massive amounts of money piled into the hands of retail investors and then firing up. That's like end of cycle stuff. I don't think we'll see that again. Those are the marks of bluffs. I think to compare what we have now to that, to think of this is where things flip into deflation really fast, right? And a lot of times what happens too, and why I also don't like really using too much economic modeling, is economic modeling accounts for no surprises. How many surprises do we just have in the last 2 decades, right? The entire tech bubble pops. The entire housing market collapses on itself. C19, no economic models all accounted for this. And it's like all you have to go off of is just like, you're expecting a perfect future. And what we don't know is if a major surprise happens at the top, because that's the time where you can get one. That something suddenly changes, right? And your chances, and what people do, like the whole write up, there are many accounts who have done a really great job of selling fear. One of them is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Constantly selling fear, constantly waiting for black swans, constantly selling that the end of times are coming as the market continues to rampage up and up and up. And a lot of people like to read about that because they do feel they've been left behind and they don't feel like they have fairly reaped the rewards of what has happened. And so, there's a big attachment to the doom narrative. But the successful calling of the Black Swan event to end the United States stock market has not happened, right? Everybody has been wrong. And eventually, the person who's been calling it for the last 10 years, when it finally happens, Rich Dad, Poor Dad's been calling it for over a decade. When it finally happens, everybody's going to call him a genius, even though the market ran up the whole time. He will still be a genius because he called it every day for over a decade. But your probability chance is, and I've seen it just here doing YouTube. For the last 6 years, I've seen people calling for the Black Swan, the end of times, and it's all going to come crumbling down in doom time. The probability of Black Swan's like less than 1%. It's small, really small probability. But what we always see is we tend to see things happen on charts. Show me a chart and I'll tell you the news. Just the way it is. C19 happened. This is a technical perfection structure. And I've gone through, and like when we had to go through this, I had to constantly reference back to it. And it's just where the famous name of double tap, bull flag, a breakout, short squeeze, violent backtest, V-bottom comes from. And showing all the examples of how this happens, and that it's very technical, that you pull back to the bull flag on top of the double tap on top of the all-time high. Double tap on top of the all-time high, bull flag, breakout, short squeeze, backtest, V-bottom. Violent backtest, V-bottom. It's super, super normal. And that this is just technical. And that our event, C19, showed up perfectly on time. This is why either C19 was, I better be careful. I'm on YouTube. I better be careful. C19 showed up at the perfect time. That's all I'm saying. It showed up at a technical, perfect level on the chart. Perfect. It also took away blame from the governments for the crash. The government was not accountable for the crash. The government was not the cause of the crash. And the government got to play hero in the crash. But it showed up perfectly on time. If there is a place for something to show up, it's not now, it's not today, it's there. And economic models don't account for that. They don't account for things happening when they're supposed to happen. So, magical unicorn fairy dust, puppet masters pulling the puppet strings, God, or a simulation. It's something. I don't know what it is. And I've spent enough time, trust me, playing with the idea of, is the government in control? Huh? Are they doing it? But then there's times where you say, how could they have? How could they have known that? How can you go back to the 1980s and gold retraces to a 702 Fibonacci retracement when nobody's even using digital charts? Everybody's doing things on paper. They don't even know of 702 back in the 1980s. Why does it hit 702 perfectly on the button and then roll over? It's weird, right? There's just stuff. So, I don't know if I have a model to go back on, and I think that if it's going to settle at 2%, I think what you'll see is we're going to see the twos show up. I think everybody's going to FOMO. Everybody's going to YOLO by the top because the Fed has created the soft landing. And then there's a chance that just something happens. Some event happens. I don't know. If there's no places for black swans to happen in here, but there is a place for it to happen here. And so we'll watch out for it. And maybe it doesn't happen right there. Maybe the weakness already emerges and then it shows up here. You know what I mean? We'll see. But thank you. Dr. Ty says, when BCB tinfoil hat merch? Hit the like. Well, see, I'm just going to sell it like Play-Doh, right? I'm going to put like wraps of aluminum foil on there and then just like brand it as like build your own BCB hat and just sell you some aluminum foil. I don't know. You talk to PTW. She helps me come up with designs.